We'll get the meeting. So, thank you. I would ask the members to take their seat and we shall start. On va commencer. Alors, bienvenue tout le monde.
Welcome, everyone. This is a meeting that was called by four committee members requesting us to study China's recent halting of Canadian canola, wheat, and pea sales to the Chinese market. The committee will be studying this request brought forward by four members of the committee to discuss this request. And I think I can read the motion. Oh, no, we'll leave it for now. Mr. Berthold, go ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank all of my colleagues from all parties for being here today. This is an emergency meeting requesting a meeting to deal with a crisis that has been ongoing for a certain amount of time now. This is the canola crisis, which is seriously affecting Canadian canola producers and has been since China decided to block canola imports. Mr. Chair, on March 21st, the committee had asked that we undertake a study to discuss this crisis, but unfortunately, at that time, committee members declined to study this crisis, which is currently affecting us. I'll read the motion that we have before us, Mr. Chair. It's that the committee invite the following witnesses to appear concerning China's recent halting of Canadian canola, wheat, and pea sales to the Chinese market. The Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, the Minister of International Trade Diversification, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, officials from CFIA, and industry representatives. And that all witnesses appear no later than Friday, March 29th, 2019. Now, I'm sure you'll know, Mr. Chair, that March 29th is today. So this motion would have to be amended so that we can change the date, provided everyone agrees. We will be bringing an amendment forward to that end shortly. And if you'll allow me, I'll continue to speak about the motion. Well, I think I should follow the order. If you're not done. Yes, I haven't done it, so I just tabled the motion and I'd like to continue now. Go ahead. Mr. Chair, China is the second largest export market for Canada for canola. There are billions of dollars in agricultural products that are exported from Canada to China. 90% of the canola produced in Canada is exported, and 40% is exported to China. In 2018, Canada exported 4.8 billion tons of canola seeds, worth $2.7 billion. There are a number of other Canadian products that are also exported to China. For example, peas, that's worth $700 million. Soybeans, $1.7 billion. Milk, $593 million. Flax, beef. So the relationship between Canada and China, when it comes to the agriculture sector, is really important. Mr. Chair, why are we here today calling for this meeting? Why are we calling to have these four ministers appear, as well as industry representatives? Well, because it seems to me that a study about the future of Canadian agricultural exports is essential, and that it should be done before these people. This is a file that has to do with the agriculture sector, and that's why on March 21st we asked this committee to study this crisis. Mr. Chair, I know that there's also a study underway at the International Trade Committee. Two ministers already agreed to appear there. We were supposed to have the ministers appear for 2 hours, or rather, they were supposed to appear at that committee, but unfortunately the time was reduced to 1 hour for both ministers, and that meeting will be happening next week. Notwithstanding that fact, Mr. Chair, we are asking the ministers to appear here before the Agriculture and Agri-Food Committee because we have questions about this crisis, and these are questions that affect farmers. They have to do with the consequences of this crisis on farmers and on the entire canola industry in Canada. There are 43,000 canola farmers in Canada. Canola production, if we are to believe Mr. Brian Innes from the Canola Council of Canada, employs over 250,000 people in Canada. So 250,000 people. So the consequences of this crisis will hit these people directly. When canola prices drop, even if it's just by $10, they can't just recover the $10 elsewhere. It's not $10 taken from the government. That money comes directly out of farmers' pockets. It's important that we hear from farmers, that we hear industry representatives, so that we can get their perspective, rather than simply hearing about the trade aspect of things. Mr. Chair, everyone recognizes that Canada produces the highest quality canola in the world. Canadian researchers developed a really extraordinary product that is a source of pride for all Canadians. So to claim that the canola sent to China didn't meet quality standards is completely absurd, and we certainly can't accept that claim. Mr. Chair, rather, we want to hear from the ministers for a number of reasons. This is one of the questions that we want to ask the ministers when they appear. The Minister of International Affairs, we want to know what discussions are happening with China to solve this crisis. Have such discussions been undertaken? The Prime Minister talked about sending a delegation to China. So who would the Prime Minister send to China, and who would they speak to? Has the Minister undertaken discussions with Canada's traditional allies to put pressure on China concerning this unfair decision? Will Canada consider special measures against China to put pressure on the country to end this crisis? So those are the questions for Minister Freeland. For Minister Bibeau, does the minister intend to participate in a mission to China? What measures will the government take to protect canola farmers and the industry in Canada? Does the minister intend to recommend a solution to cabinet that was recommended by the Premier of Saskatchewan? And will there be changes in the coming years? In terms of production, it's important that we hear what the minister has to say about the future of canola in Canada and what she thinks about this crisis and how long she thinks it might last. That's important. And so we need to hear from the Minister of Agriculture, and we need to hear her answer these questions. For Minister Carr, what are his plans to ensure that this crisis doesn't affect other sectors? Does the minister know how the Prime Minister's failures abroad are impacting farmers? For example, the Durham crisis, the recent crisis, the canola crisis in China, the Durham semolina crisis or the Durham wheat crisis in Vietnam, all the problems that we've had with Saudi Arabia. It seems that this government can't solve very important international crises for Canadian farmers. And paradoxically, Mr. Speaker, I've heard many people say in the government that they are embracing the results of the Barden Report that would recommend exporting, or rather increasing exports up to 75 billion and then 85 billion. Well, it seems to me that they're already having a pretty hard time maintaining their current export levels, and that's concerning. So we need to hear from the Minister of International Trade. Tell us what the impact of that decreased trade or decreased exports are having on farmers. For all of these reasons, it's important that we have this study, that we hear from these three ministers, representatives of CFIA, representatives from industry, and farmers as well, because farmers are directly affected by this crisis. Currently, we're talking about canola. Now, canola is being affected by China officially, but yesterday I heard from grain farmers in Quebec, and I can tell you that everyone is concerned. Everyone is concerned because even if there hasn't been any official market closure for other products, people are hesitating to send their products to China because they don't know if they're going to have buyers. So the canola crisis is affecting far more people than just canola farmers. It's also affecting other farmers, and we need to do everything possible to ensure that this crisis does not spread to other agricultural sectors in Canada. So I really encourage my colleagues to approve this motion.
Want to hear from the government official, from the government minister, about what they are doing to solve this crisis. We need a solution. We need a solution fast. And all the producers, all the Canadians want to have those answers from those who are responsible to solve it. So the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, the Minister of International Trade Diversification, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, official from CFIA, and industry representative. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Et j'aurai l'occasion.
Thank you very much, Chair. And as I said earlier, I may be discussing this question later. Thank you, Mr. Berthold. Mr. Dreeshen.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And of course, I have canola in the bin right now. So, I mean, this affects people such as myself, but all farmers. There's so much of it that has been left, for the road bans are on right now, and so it's difficult to get it to market, and then all of this uncertainty. Certainly, canola is something that as Canadians we should be extremely proud of, and then my colleagues from Manitoba recognize that this is where it was developed, and of course it is Canadian oil, and that's really, I think, the critical part. We are extremely proud of what we do, what we have been able to do with this particular crop, and the world understands that it is some of the best type of an oil seed to be able to turn into a product for human consumption, and it does affect everyone. And we have companies in Quebec that crush oil and sell that oil into China right now. I had the opportunity to be in China a while ago, and this is just the things that we saw, and we were trying to push for all types of products and to make sure that there was a great recognition for the quality products that are being produced. And unfortunately, they know that the consumers in China understand that Canadians are sending them high quality, some of the very best quality food that there is. But unfortunately, we have a political crisis, and that is the concern that I have. I know that when we were speaking about sort of the timeline of the crisis, March 5th, it was reported the Canadians' largest grain handler, Richardson International, had their canola export license canceled over what Chinese claimed were hazardous pests. So this is taking a look at dockage and so on, which is something that is a standard a standard part of grain handling. But there's another aspect as well. I mean, we did talk about bringing having the witnesses appear here, that being the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, the International Trade Diversification, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, to come and speak at this committee on Thursday, March 21st, because I had presented that motion on Friday, March 15th. And this was before some of the other things had taken place, because as we know, on March 21st, the Canadian Canola Council stated that the Chinese importers were refusing to purchase any canola seed from Canada. We could have been talking about that on that particular day, the March 21st, but that didn't happen. Right now, we know that Viterra's export license has been suspended, again, using that same bogus argument. And I think that's a critical part. And again, we realize that contracts are not being filled. And so where do you send that product when you have it sitting in your bins? So this is a critical component that we have to look at. And I've been fortunate over the last, both in this Parliament and the one before, to do some work with trade. And my colleague, Mr. Hoback, we've spent time in the U.S. talking about some of the issues associated with NAFTA, and as well with CETA, recognizing what had been taking place there. Spent some time in Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand with the ASEAN countries, trying to see if there are other ways for us to move our products. These are all critical issues that need to be spoken to by our trade ministers and our foreign affairs ministers. These are things that are necessary for each and every one of us to be able to bring to light. When we speak as well about bringing in industry representatives, we also need the farmers. It's got to be the farmers that are talking, because they're the ones that are on the ground. They're the ones that are seeing what is taking place. And that I think is a critical component. This is something that we should be sure that we include as this study goes along. So far what we've seen is delays and postponements. As I had indicated, we could have been and should have been talking about this the same date that the Canola Council had got their directions and directives. But we can't continue to procrastinate, and I think we all know that the government is seized with a lot of other issues at this particular point in time, and I think it's critical. We can't expect much to come out of PMO, but we can still expect something to come out of the ministerial departments and from these ministers that have that responsibility. So I think that's the critical part. We know that Canadian leadership is more than a ceremonial position, and we have to make sure that we have people in good faith that are out there working as hard as they possibly can for our farmers and for canola. And again, as was mentioned before, people would think, well, you're going to lose a little bit on $10 here, $20 here as far as the bases are concerned, and that changing to affect the prices that we have. That comes directly out of the farmer's pocket. The people that are moving, the grain elevation costs are exactly the same. The cost to move it wherever it may end up going is exactly the same. So that is coming out of the farmer's pocket. And they are being hit with so many other things at this point in time. We know in a couple of days that there's going to be carbon taxes that are associated with this. All of the other problems that are associated with what is happening right now with this government is another concern that they have. When we take a look at what is happening in Alberta specifically, of course, there is a provincial election that is taking place, so we don't have that government-to-government relationship that can be handled. So it's very important that at least we're getting some direction out of the federal government, so that people have a little bit of hope out there. And again, as has been mentioned, seeding intentions are critical. People they've prepped the land for it. They bought the fertilizer. They have the canola seed already to go. And so now what do you do with that? And so you change into other commodities, but the concern is what's going to happen to those commodities as well. And as we've seen, there are concerns about wheat and peas, and that has been indicated here. So we need to know, and the government is going to have better information, and CFIA is going to have better information than perhaps some of the industry leaders are going to have at this point in time. So that we need to have. We have to get that discussion going. So I think it's critical that we get this on the way just as quickly as possible. And I do thank Mr. Berthold for making sure that this is uppermost in everyone's minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dreesen. And now Mr. Hoback.
Well, thank you, Chair. And again, I'd like to thank my colleagues here for allowing me to come into the Ag Committee from the Trade Committee and present on this issue. Mr. Dreesen, I know Luke have been really working hard on this file in the Ag Committee, and they're doing what they need to do to make sure that this moves forward, and they're trying to do it again here today. And I just want to be here to support them, to make sure that our farmers out west and the industries right across Canada know that we have their backs. Chair, it's really frustrating. We were here before. We've made notice of the problem. Now we're seeing the problems expanding. It's now gone on to a second company. We're talking to people in the industry, and there's lots of confusion within the industry and what's next. When you talk at new crop canola, new crop wheat, new crop barley, new crop linseed, pulses, some people say that yes, they're going to be impacted. Some people say no, they won't be impacted. Some people aren't sure what's going to be impacted. I think what they all agree on is they really don't know. And that's the problem. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what the future looks like. And there's been no guidance by this government to help provide or shine some light on what that looks like. We don't know if the Prime Minister's reached out to the ambassador. We don't know if CFIA officials have been on the ground to just reboot what we already know is not true, because everybody in this room will agree that we have the best canola in the world, we have the best food products in the world, and when we ship them abroad, we ensure that they get the best of the best. So we know it's not a quality issue. We know it's not an issue as far as that. This is a political issue. We do not have an ambassador in China right now. So I need to know who is on the ground actually talking to officials in China in regards to this. I'm also very concerned that this is going to spread to other sectors. Maple syrup could be next. Seafood could be next. We really don't know, and all of them are scared. So all of a sudden you look at this could spread right across Canada. Canola is just the start. And the impact is going to be really, really huge to the Canadian economy. And all because the Prime Minister has created a bad relationship with China. All because of his actions in his first visit there, and then a combination of things that he's done that has not created a good working environment with our partners who buy our products in China. And we've seen this in other countries, Chair. India, pulses. You know, it's really sad what happened in India, but the people who pay for that are the farmers, are the people who are exporting into that marketplace. And in that situation, what happened is the farmer said, okay, we can't ship to India. We managed to find a market. Guess what? Guess where that market was? China. Guess what? That market's now in jeopardy too. Like every time we turn around, whether it's the Prime Minister or the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they're putting up hurdles for Canadian businesses to do businesses around the world. You know, another example is Saudi Arabia. You know, Saudi Arabia during this last crisis bought a lot of canola and a lot of oil. They were actually a market for that product when China decided not to take it. And we worked with Saudi Arabia. And yeah, we have concerns with Saudi Arabia on human rights and women's rights. You bet we do. And we have influence with them when we trade with them. But when you have a situation where they won't even talk to you, well, you have zero influence. You have zero impact. When they don't care what you have to say, that's exactly what happens. They don't care what you have to say. But who pays? Farmers. When we see the drop in price in the market, everybody says, well, the canola market's dropped some $20 or $30 a ton, maybe $40 a ton, and maybe not done yet. That's the profit the farmer gets. That's not the cut for Cargo or JRI or anybody else. That's not the cut for CN. That's not the cut for the food processor. That's the farmer's margin. That's his profit. That comes right out of his wallet. So if he needs to make adjustments to his planting intentions, he needs to do that now. That's why we need to have the ministers come forward now and tell us exactly what they plan to do. Give us a roadmap on how you're going to improve these relationships with these countries. China being very particular right now. Tell us what you're going to do. Are you going to have a temporary ambassador in China? Are you going to appoint a special envoy? Who's in that envoy? What are they going to talk about? Have you talked to the ambassador? Have you invited him into your office? Has the Prime Minister had sat down and had to heart with him? I don't know. Farmers don't know, and I can assure you nobody over there knows. And it's been going on for 3 weeks, so why haven't you? Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs, has she talked to him? I don't know. She's not talking on the subject. Yet the Minister of Agriculture 2 weeks ago said the Minister of Foreign Affairs has the lead on this topic. Yet they won't allow her to come in front of committee, which blows my mind because she's actually very good in committee. I've worked with her when I was the chair of the Trade Committee. She was an excellent member of the committee. She could provide a lot of insight in what's going on, and farmers would appreciate that insight. Why they're putting her in the corner, I don't know. I can't figure that one out. The Minister of Trade and the Minister of Agriculture, I'm glad they're in Saskatchewan today. Where have you been? You don't need a passport to go to Saskatchewan, and it shouldn't take an invite from the Premier of Saskatchewan to get you there. That's what it took. That's outrageous. This issue has been flaring its head for 3 weeks now, going on 4, and they're just starting to engage. Prime Minister's starting to consider that maybe we should send an envoy. Very frustrating. But let's put that behind us. What I need to know is what you're going to do now and what you're going to do in the future. What are our trade commissioners doing on the ground? Who are they talking to? How are they talking to our customers there on the ground? What's being said there? That intelligence, how is it coming back to farmers here in Canada? How is it being shared with the agriculture community? Is it being shared with the agriculture community? Those are the things we need to work on. Are we going to do an envoy? Great. Who's going to be part of that envoy? Again, seeding is around the corner. If you're going to do this, it has to happen now. Have you asked for the visit? Again, all these questions should have been asked 2 weeks ago, not now. So the frustration's there, but we'll take what we get. The reality is, okay, we brought the committee back, and I appreciate Chair for doing that. But he could have came back on Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure why we're here Friday. If we would have came in here on Thursday, we could have dealt with this. The ministers could have been in here on Friday. Or if they want to come tomorrow, I'll stay here and I'll talk to them tomorrow. Sunday, fine, because we came back on Sunday for the Trade Committee. This is urgent. It needs to be dealt with now, and the Conservatives are ready to deal with it now, and I know my NDP member is too. You may notice the NDP member, he flew the furthest. He was back in BC. He hopped on a plane late last night, and he's here today. Look at my colleagues from Manitoba, my colleagues from Alberta. They know that this is an important issue, not only for their provinces, but for our country. And that's why I really appreciate, Luke, you standing up across the country saying we're going to have farmers' backs, whether they're in the canola industry, whether they're in the supply and management sector, or whether in the maple syrup sector or seafood sector, we'll have their backs. So we need to do something. Are you going to do something? You have the majority. The ball's in your court. You decide.
Thank you, Mr. Hoback. Now, Mr. Falk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's a pleasure for me to be here this morning. I wish I didn't have to be here. I wish I could be back in my riding meeting with constituents. I had a farm visit lined up at a brand new poultry farm with the latest technology in the egg industry, and I was supposed to bring greetings there. And so I'd sooner be doing that than being here. But I am here because I think it's extremely important. It's an urgent issue that has seized us here. And it's something that this committee needs to grasp and needs to get a hold of. And that's why I fully support the motion that's on the table to bring the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of International Trade, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, as well as department officials and industry individuals and farmers to this committee to provide not only questions for us to look at, but perhaps some answers. I think it'd be terribly important. And so what I've done is I've been hearing back from some of the farmers in my riding about this issue, and I'm going to read you a few quotes in just a moment here. But almost a month ago, this issue started with the export permit for Richardson's for canola to China being revoked, and that was followed up now with the permit for Viterra. I'm sure there's going to be others. We're unable to sell our canola into the Chinese market. That's 40% of our 90% of our exports. We count on exports for our canola industry. Our canola industry is a $26 billion industry here in Canada. We have 43,000 farmers, canola producers in this country. This isn't an issue that affects just a handful of people. It's not an issue that affects just a couple trading companies that want to do business with China. This is an issue that affects 250,000 individuals working in the canola industry, 43,000 canola producers. This is a very big, significant issue, and it requires that we take immediate action. Some of the farmers in my riding have communicated with us, and I just want to briefly share a few quotes from them. The first one is from a farmer from the Oakbank area, Howard Berdeen. He says, "This is definitely a concern. I've seen $1 a bushel drop, which is a significant portion of the profit. I'd be tempted to grow less canola going forward." Volker Weirich from the Arma Springfield says, "We're extremely concerned about market access and potential clampdown on other imports. We're up against the wall here. We're cutting back on canola because of this." Greg Smith, Arma Springfield, "We're slated to seed 800 acres of canola, but we're contemplating dropping that down. It's hard to be optimistic about what to grow this coming year." Greg Smith, another farmer from Springfield, says, "We have enough challenges marketing and growing a crop without getting dragged into a political quagmire." Jeff Van Rysel says, "I've already shifted to other crops out of worry of what's going to happen. This will have long-term detrimental effects to the Canadian economy." And then Vernon Fraze, a farmer close to Grunthal in the Arm of Hanover, says, "We're seeing 23 million canola acres put in jeopardy. This puts downward pressure on prices for every other crop as well. Wheat, soybeans, corn, and barley will all be affected. And then finally, Roger Voggs from the Arm of Springfield says, is Mr. Trudeau leaving farmers to bear the consequences of this political conflict, or is he prepared to support our canola farmers like the U.S. administration did with its aid package to soybean growers? Mr. Chair, those are just a few comments that we've received in my office from farmers in my constituency. And there's farmers right across Canada that have similar concerns and other questions in addition to that. This is an issue that we need to be seized with. Spring planting is just around the corner. Farmers need to know what they're going to be planting this year. Is there a market for the crop that they want to grow? Many of these farmers are already committed. They've done their fall work, prepared their soils, their quarter sections, their acres to already grow this crop, this canola crop. But there's an opportunity for some of them to switch gears and change. But they need to have the assurance that they have the backing of this government and that our government here in Canada is prepared to support them and to resolve this trade issue with China. It's not a quality control issue. We know that our agricultures, our products here in Canada are world-class products. Nobody produces a better product than we do. And no one's been able, from the Chinese side, to produce any evidence that would suggest that the allegations that they've made about quality control are actually true and actually factual. We know that they're false. We know that we have the highest quality product anywhere in the world, and that's what China's been benefiting from all these years. And so this is obviously a political issue. It's something that our ministers, that our Prime Minister needs to be seized with. He needs to get on the phone to whoever he is. You know, we don't even have an ambassador in China at the moment that can be our advocate, can be the advocate for 43,000 farmers, for 250,000 people employed in the canola industry here in Canada. Who's our advocate in China? We need somebody on the ground. We need boots on the ground. Many political leaders across the western provinces have been asking for a very high-level delegation to be sent to China to negotiate this political crisis, and so the question is, who's going to be part of that delegation, and who are they going to be meeting with, and what are the issues that we need to be addressing here at committee, and so, Mr. Chair, I just want to impress upon you once again that this is a good motion. It's a motion that will enable this committee to move the issue forward, to move the ball a little closer to the goal line, because we've got to get the ball across the line, and we've got to get this trade issue resolved. It's a political issue, and we need to know what our ministers and politicians are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to reiterate as well my regrets that I have to be here today, I guess, because we're right in the middle of the Royal Winter Fair in Brandon, Manitoba, the only one of two Royal Winter Fairs designations in this country, and it's a big event for our western Manitoba area, and particularly the city of Brandon. And I've spent the last 3 days there. This issue that we're here talking about today even started back about when the city of Brandon hosted the Briar back in early March, and I've had farmers coming to me every day since this happened at the beginning of March, with their concerns about what are they going to do for their seeding intentions this year, what's happened to the drop in prices that they've had since the beginning of December. If we've lost 40% of the sale of our canola, as my colleagues have pointed out, that's roughly just under 2 million tons of canola that we've lost exports for. That's a huge hit to the economy of the prairies at $500 a ton. It's where the prices were when this started, and they're much lower than that now. You can see the agriculture hit is in nearly the $1 billion. We've got a situation where our ag minister in Manitoba on Monday called for a face-to-face meeting between politicians in Canada with those in China. Premier Moe from Saskatchewan did the same. The ag minister in Saskatchewan, the only reason that Mr. Eichler didn't include the Alberta minister is because they're in the middle of an election right now. I've had retailers come to me and say that they're very concerned about farmers coming into their shops and already talking about cutting back on the seed purchases that they've already made for this particular year. A lot of those are made at the end of their fiscal years, Mr. Chair. And so the crop rotation that we've got in agriculture is 3 to 4 years in canola. So farmers make these decisions for 3 to 4 years out in regards to the kind of crop program that they'll have and the amount of canola that they will grow and the inputs that they require. And that's how long out the budgeting process can be impacted by decisions that are beyond these farmers' control. We've got a situation where, of course, we're faced with asking for this motion today. I want to thank my colleague Luc Berthold from Quebec as our ag critic for bringing this to the attention of the committee, and I thank the committee for hosting today's meeting as well. But it is important, as you can see with the ag ministers that are already involved, to have our ag minister here at this meeting. At a subsequent meeting, the international trade, my colleague from Saskatchewan, Mr. Hoback, has just indicated the importance of making sure that we have the trade side here, because this is definitely what this is about. It's 253,000 jobs, 43,000 farmers, to reiterate what my colleagues have said there. But a lot of these jobs are at the West Coast. They're in the cleaning and handling of the product in the terminals as they're loaded onto it. There's a lot of union jobs involved in this as well as they load those ships and make sure that the product is secure as well as safe. The quality of this product is not in question. We have an extremely beneficial and thorough checking program through the Canadian Grain Commission and the CFIA, the Food Inspection Agency, do their work on a regular basis to check every outgoing shipment of grain that leaves our ports, and so we know the quality of it when it leaves. The other area, I guess, was even one of the mentions that yesterday I was at a Brandon Chamber of Commerce luncheon before we raced out of there to get a plane to get down here last night. Over 300 business people in a community like Brandon showed up for a luncheon yesterday, and this was a main topic of concern for all of them as well, because they know how important that cash flow is in our Western Manitoba area to all of their businesses, whether they're in the retail industries in clothing or food industries, grocery stores, or wherever, Mr. Chair. I met with Bill Campbell, too, the president of Keystone Agricultural Producers, the general farm organization in Manitoba, and he asked, what can we do? And basically what he was saying is, we're so frustrated, we don't know what's happened, we don't know what the government's plan is, we don't know if they're talking to China, we don't know if the bureaucrats are talking to China. There's rumors that they are, and I would hope that they are. But from a president of a general farm organization like that, not to be included, as our colleagues in other provinces need to know those things as well, I think raises the issue of why this is such an emergency. That's also why we need the Foreign Affairs Minister here. For them to be able to know that this has gone on for at least a month already without the kinds of meetings that they feel are necessary to be able to bring the discussion point back to China on the political side is a big concern to them. They know as well from their involvement in the Grain Commission and other areas that the quality of our product is not at question here. The dockage that goes into the loads is something that when it comes from the farm, it's with canola particularly, it's very little dockage as it leaves the farm. So that's not even it shouldn't even be a concern in question here, because it's so easy to clean canola right at the combine when it's being harvested. I guess the issue that they say is that this is way beyond our control. That's why they want to have officials from the CFIA here, is to find out that scientific part of it, what they've done, how they do their checks, and we can outline that because we all know what the process is. But it would still be nice to hear from them. And then I think the industry representatives themselves that have been impacted by the sales of their product into the grain companies, some of those industry representatives, would be good to have them appear before us. It might even be good to have someone here just to make sure that the railroads are represented as well, even to look at the kinds of handling that they feel is necessary. From their end, it's pretty simple, I think, but to see that there's no contamination or quality disturbance from their end either. The general public may need to know that. I think the agricultural industry already knows that it's a safe bet that the quality of our product is as good when it comes off the ship as it was when it went in. So with those areas, Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair, I guess I could reiterate, my colleagues have already done that, and the importance of the value of the products, of the canola products to our industry. I'd also like to say that we have included soybeans in that. We're looking at 59%, I think it is, of our soybean industry exports go to China. It's about $1.7 billion a year as well. And we're just into the process in western Manitoba, southern Manitoba, eastern Saskatchewan of developing an expanding soybean industry there right now as well. And we certainly don't want to see these types of trade scenarios become the rule, I guess, in other crops as well as other livestock areas that may be a concern as well. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair, for right now. And if there's anything else that we can add after our colleagues have spoken, we'd be glad to help with that as well. Thank you.
Mr. McGuire, Monsieur Drouin. Drouin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to say right from the get-go that we do agree in principle with the motion, but there is a but. What we don't want to do is double the efforts of the International Trade Committee, and I think that was the purpose of the last reason why we had not accepted the last motion. And I also want to talk a little bit about the delays and part of the reason. I mean, I think it's important to take accountability when there's delays, and we could have heard from officials last March 21st should the opposition had not decided to create voting marathon for 30 hours. We could have done that, but they chose otherwise. And I also want to say we are focused on that. And I mean, we are extremely focused on that, and the minister is focused on that. The prime minister is focused on this issue. Now, I can't talk to what the opposition will do, but I know that last Friday, they had 30 plus some questions to ask to the government, and only one question was asked on canola, only one question. And I'm not going to answer on the reason why. They can answer that for themselves. But we know that it is a fact that the CFIA has already been in contact last week with the Chinese government. It is a fact that CFIA again has been in contact with the Chinese government again this week. We know as well, I think Mr. Hoback mentioned it, that Minister Carr and Minister Bibeau are meeting with Canola Growers Association. They're meeting with the Canola Council of Canada. They're meeting with the Saskatchewan Canola Development Commission today. There's roundtables. So our government is taking this seriously, and they are taking this approach, and they are meeting with stakeholders and industry associations that represent farmers. But, for us to agree to a motion, we're not going to invite the Minister of Agriculture back to this committee to simply say the same things as she's going to say on international trade. And I know Mr. Hoback is a member of that committee, so he will hear what she has to say at that particular committee. And we're not going to invite the Minister of International Trade Diversification either. He's going to appear in front of that committee as well. I think if we're going to move forward with a motion, we have to be seen to be adding value. I think there is a lot of merit to have industry associations appear in front of this committee. I think we should be inviting officials from CFIA and potentially from Agriculture Canada to ensure that, yes, programs, if in case the worst case scenario happens, that we will be there to help them. I know the Premier Moe has asked for advance payments for that particular threshold to be lifted. I don't know if that's the answer, but I do want to ask industry representatives about that. I think it's important that this committee finds out whether or not it's the right way forward. So with that, I would move an amendment to that particular motion. And just before I do, though, I think it's also important that we don't cause fear mongering with other industries. I mean, I don't see the particular value of having other commodities appear before this committee. We know for a fact that nothing official has been done to other commodities. But I think it's important that we spend our time on canola producers, and we hear with regards to the notice of non-compliance from China with regards to canola exports to China. So I think Mr. Bertel has already alluded to this. Obviously, the date is going to have to be changed. March 29th is today, and here we are talking about this. But I would move that we simply hear from Canadian Canola and that the committee invite the following witnesses to appear concerning official notices of non-compliance from China for export Canadian canola seeds. So we would like to hear from officials from CFIA and industry representatives. Alors, je peux te dire en français aussi que le...
You can say it in French as well, that the committee invite the following witnesses to appear concerning the recent official notices of non-compliance concerning Canadian canola exports, representatives of CFIA, and industry representatives. And, of course,
for Friday, April 12th. So we can discuss as soon as possible when we would like to hear from witnesses. It's just, it's going to be a matter of who's available as soon as possible.
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur Drouin. Alors, on a un amendement sur...
So we have an amendment to the motion, and now we'll go to Mr. McGregor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I appreciate everyone's comments about rather being in their constituency, but I think we can all agree that, we are elected as members of Parliament, and when duty calls, we have to come to Ottawa. And this is one particular situation. I don't have canola growing in my riding, but I certainly appreciate the importance it has to the Canadian economy. And I don't want to belabor the points that have been made by my Conservative colleagues, but it's not just the canola itself, it's also its spin-off effects, because those farmers reinvest those profits in their communities. They make investments into machinery, they hire a lot of people. The canola just doesn't come off the field by itself. So we also have to take into account the spin-off effects. And, I think, like has been said, farmers have to make their plans as to what type of crops they're going to plant months, if not a year in advance. It requires a lot of planning. We, in this committee, have been seized with a number of studies, notably our recent study on farmers' mental health. We had a lot of testimony about how the unknown variables, especially with environmental factors, but also not knowing the commodity prices, whether trade deals are going to be honored or not, these all wear down on farmers' mental health. We've heard very substantive testimony to that regard. And I think with this is one of those moments where, yes, we do have a number of studies that we're working on, Chair. But at times like this, I think the committee has to come together, realize the seriousness of the situation, and we have to act upon it. Now, I want to address Mr. Drouin's point about the ministers. Yes, next week we are going to have 2 ministers appear before the International Trade Committee. I think Mr. Hoback said it's down to 1 hour. Just so we're going to have 2 ministers appear beside jointly for just 1 hour, and that's the only kind of interaction we get to have. Reference has been made to the fact that yes, we have access to ministers during question period, but come on, right? 35 seconds to ask your question, 35 seconds for an answer. How in the world can we have a substantive discussion on such an important issue through question period? And with regard to what happened last week, Mr. Drouin knows perfectly well that in a majority government, the opposition has very limited procedural tools at its disposal, and that whole 30-hour voting marathon was directly linked to what's going on with Madame Jody Wilson-Raybould and SNC-Lavalin. And in fact, I was in the chamber a number of times when motions were made on points of order to stop the voting marathon if we just simply allowed them to come and say their piece. So I just want to put that on the record, Chair, that multiple attempts were made through points of order tonight to stop that. They were all rejected by the Liberals. But that's beside the point. The point I want to make is that the last time we had a minister appear before the Agriculture Committee was on November 29th. We did not have the chance during the recent financial cycle to have Minister McCauley appear. We now have a new minister. And so to say that having a 1-hour exchange with 2 ministers at another committee is sufficient is completely off the mark, Mr. Chair. I think it's great that the ministers are reaching out to industry representatives, but in our system of government, our responsible system of government, where we're lucky to have the executive branch sit within the House of Commons, one of the best things that the legislative branch does is its oversight of ministries and agencies. And the buck stops with the minister. We need to have more than an hour. And if Minister Carr and Minister Bibeau are so sure of the policies they're putting into place, then I think they can, stand up for themselves, appear before this committee for 2 hours, and sufficiently explain their actions and defend themselves if they're very confident that they're doing everything they can. On a final note, we as members of parliament, I may not represent canola farmers, but we have a number of people here who do. Members of parliament speak for their communities. We are their representatives. We were sent here to Ottawa to represent specific geographic areas of Canada. And it would be a shame to not allow members of parliament who represent canola growing regions to have that chance to have a polite, respectful exchange with the minister on exactly what's going on. This is the crux of the matter. And I think the conversation today and the amendment that's being proposed is precisely why we wanted to have this meeting out in the open and televised, so the Canadian public knows where the respective parties fall on this issue. So I hope that the amendment that was made by Mr. Drouin is defeated and that we can honor the original amendment. I think it's incredibly important to have the ministers, at the very least the agriculture minister, appear before the agriculture committee. This is an agricultural product. This is absolutely an important issue. I have a number of questions. I think this raises serious questions about our relationship with China. If you look at the track record of China and international trade rules, they have a track record of systematically violating WTO rules. We know that they use their trade policy as a vehicle to give their state-owned enterprises access to strategic markets and to critical areas. And if it was a fully functioning and accountable, transparent democracy, I think we could all rest a bit easier, but it's not. And I think we should be very concerned that if we in the future are going to be trying to pursue more access to the Chinese market, but we look at the stroke of a pen where they can just simply say no to 40% of one of our most valuable agricultural exports, well, what kind of contingency plans does this government have in place for when that eventuality happens? This has happened now. If we are able to fix this in the next couple of months, what's to say it won't happen again in another year, in another 2 years with another agricultural product? These are serious questions, and we, as the people's representatives in a democratic, open system, we demand having access to the minister so that those two ministers can explain their actions. So I think I've made my point, Chair, as to why I will be supporting the original motion. And I seriously hope that my Liberal colleagues have been listening to my arguments and will find it in their hearts to agree with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. And now, Mr. Berthold.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's totally ironic. I think it just shows how out of touch Liberals are with what's happening in the West. I mean, everything that I've heard from the Liberals suggests that. Now, considering the fact that last week we could have heard from people, but we didn't hear from them because the opposition used one of the only tools that it had to actually hear from witnesses in the SNC-Lavalin case. I mean, then they ended the Justice Committee, and he's the very one who shut down the Justice Committee, and now he's telling us this. Those 30 hours of votes were caused by Mr. Drouin. He's the one who shut down the Justice Committee, and now he's blaming us for not having had a meeting because he shut down any possibility of public hearings on SNC-Lavalin. He's the one who's at the source of all of this. I proposed to the government several times last week that we end the voting marathon by allowing Ms. Jody Wilson-Raybould to appear and by allowing the Justice Committee to continue its study. I did this several times, and every time I was told no. And Mr. Chair, today, the very man who shut down the Justice Committee is trying to prevent ministers from speaking to the Agriculture Committee, and he's blaming us for not having had these meetings last week. It's totally ridiculous. Now, I've heard from my colleagues who comes from the...
They talked about real story. They talked about real things. They talked about real fear. This is not fear-mongering. This is the reality. They are afraid of what will happen, and you don't want to hear from that? You just said that this is fear-mongering? Just go there and talk to them. You will see that this is a real fear. You will see that they are really afraid of what's coming up from China. This is unbelievable, Mr. Speaker, that we heard that. Mr. Chair, thank you. This is unbelievable, Mr. Chair, that we heard that from this colleague, this Liberal colleagues. I hope that he will go to the West. I hope that he will go listen to the farmers, to the canola growers, and hear what they have to say. Because they are afraid of what's happening right now with China. They don't know how to deal with that. They will lose a lot of money, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, just the member is mistaken. I never talked about fear-mongering for canola growers. I just said for other sectors, we don't want to further these issues by fear-mongering. Yes, potentially adding to the fear of those anxieties, but we certainly want to hear from canola growers here at this committee. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification. Go ahead, Monsieur.
C'est juste pour vous montrer, Monsieur le Président, à quel point
I just want to show how out of touch my colleague is, because canola producers don't just produce canola. They produce other things too, Mr. Chair. And once again, we've seen how out of touch they are. Canola farmers produce other things because they do crop rotation. Yeah, well, that's obvious, Mr. Drouin. They do crop rotation, and they plan ahead. And the other farmers that I met with yesterday from Cereals Canada are really concerned about what's coming. And I think it just shows how they're not taking this crisis seriously. Now, at the very beginning of March, I would remind everyone, we sent a letter that was not signed by all of the opposition members. We didn't have the opportunity to get everyone's signatures, but we had asked, and this is early March, well before the International Trade Committee studied this issue, we called for the ministers to appear to talk about this issue. So this is a totally unacceptable excuse. I don't know what they're afraid of, but we have to remember, Mr. Chair, that at the very first opportunity, we invited the new Agriculture Minister to appear here before the Agriculture Committee, and she ran away. The Liberals are refusing to hear from their minister, and that's unacceptable. And on a crisis like this, that is affecting farmers, canola farmers, of course, but also farmers of other things all across Canada. So we're talking about maple producers, pork producers, maybe beef producers. We don't know who all is going to be affected by this, but we want to hear. And the very first time that the Liberals have spoken on this file, what have they said? We don't want to hear from the Minister of Agriculture at the Agriculture Committee. I think that the silence speaks volumes here. Why doesn't she want to come to this committee? Now, next week at the International Trade Committee, they're going to have the Agriculture Minister, who's going to be there but not here. And then there's the Trade Minister, which makes sense. But we had also asked for the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Freeland. Now, there's no overlap there. She could come here. We would welcome here. Ms. Bibeau herself said that the file was currently being handled by the Foreign Affairs Minister, by Ms. Freeland. And the only person that the Liberals don't want to see at either committee is Ms. Freeland. Mr. Speaker, it's time for us to wake up here. This is a real crisis. It's urgent. Now, the other aspect of the amendment that is totally absurd, Mr. Chair, is that this crisis has been going on since March. They're proposing to have a meeting with CFIA representatives and industry representatives no later than April 12th. Why push it back to April 12th? This is the week that we should be hearing from these people, from industry representatives in the CFIA. Or at the very latest, beginning of next week. Why are we putting it off for 2 weeks? The next meeting is when we should be hearing from these people. We should have a special meeting on Sunday. Wouldn't bother me, Mr. Chair. We could hear from people on Monday. Why wait? This is a crisis. And it's not just the canola industry, it's all grain producers in Canada who are concerned. And we're also concerned for everyone in all sectors. Mr. Chair, there's a record amount of canola that is building up in silos in Western Canada. Why? Well, you'll remember there was a difficult harvest, bad winter. There were transportation problems once again. And this crisis is creating a lot of uncertainty.
Stored on farm. As such, many farmers fear they won't have the space they need to store the 2019 harvest if the situation with China isn't resolved soon. They are concerned about possible bottlenecks throughout Canada's grain handling system that could restrict the grain industry's ability to get other crops to market. Canada's rail system is already operating at or near capacity. This dispute with China has cost the Canadian canola industries approximately $1 billion in losses since it began in early March. The Canola Council of Canada said prices have dropped 10% in recent week. Falling price also means many farmers in Western Canada haven't contracted as much grain as they traditionally do because current prices are simply too low. Crop spoilage is another thing farmers are worried about. Last year, challenging harvest due to early snowfall and high moistures means a lot of the canola currently stored on farm in Western Canada has a higher moisture level than normal, which means the crop cannot be stored as long. This is the reality, Mr. Chair. This is why it is urgent to act right now, not in 2 weeks. We need to hear from the minister, from the ag minister, from the new ag minister. She doesn't have to fear us. We want answers for Canadians. We want answers for canola growers. We want answers for producers. We want to hear from the trade minister. We want to tell him how important it is for farmers that the trade with other countries be predictable. We must say that as producers and as an agricultural view. We must tell him, we should. And the one who is responsible for naming an ambassador, for the trade, for relationship with China, won't appear in any of these two committees. This is unacceptable, Mr. Chair. So that's why we cannot accept this amendment. We will not accept this amendment. We will not let the Liberals go away with this because producers need answers. And I hope they will focus on something else that the cover-up that they are worried about since now 8 weeks, 9 weeks. So that's the real problem. So it's now time to take your responsibility and do the right thing. Let the ministers appear before us and have this meeting as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Monsieur Berthold. Mr. Holbach.
Mr. Chair. You talked about March 21st. Liberals control the committee. The chair could have had that meeting if he still wanted to, and we were going to be there. In fact, if he wanted to do it the next morning, we would have been there. The voting was well done well before that meeting was to start. It was CFIA officials. They are here in Ottawa. We could have had that meeting. He chose not to. Liberals have majorities on these committees. I can't change that. So when the chair says, I want to go home, which is what he did, I can't do nothing about it. But what really makes me even more upset is he reschedules the meeting, and what does he do? He breaks his word. His word to us in the committee was he was going to give each minister an hour and then 2 hours for officials. What does he do? He combines it in one meeting because that's easy. It's convenient. We can do that. Get it done. Get off the plate. Get back to home. That's what we're facing on the Trade Committee. So make it right here in the Ag Committee. Do it proper. Do a proper study. Make sure farmers understand what's going on. That's all they're wanting. There's no scandal here, so you don't have to worry. Other than the scandal that Prime Minister has with relationships with other countries, but that's a different topic. And it's really unfortunate that agriculture producers across Canada are paying for that. I'll use the example. Hutchinson syrup out of Nova Scotia had all these maple syrup in bottles ready to go to Saudi Arabia until one tweet. Now, thankfully, Canadians said, you know what, we'll help you out. We bought the bottle, the syrup in those bottles, and they were able to move it here in Canada. But those are the consequences when the Minister of Foreign Affairs just goes rogue. Those are the consequences when the Prime Minister doesn't take foreign relationships seriously. Those are the problems when you're not going or having ongoing relationships with countries around the world, even countries that you don't agree with. And you know what? If you want to change them, trade with them. Show them a better way. Talk about how things are better in Canada because we let women drive. They look at that and they appreciate that, and they slowly start to respect what we do and how we do it, and they want to do the same thing. Quit preaching. Now, what this committee needs to do, it doesn't have a choice. At least I don't see it. If it does, then it's really neglecting its role as parliamentarians. They need to do exactly what this motion asks for. And they need to do it now. So let's bring in people tomorrow. Let's bring them in on Sunday and Monday. Farmers are making decisions right now. Right now. Not April 12th. April 12th in southern Alberta, they'll be in the fields. That's why it should have been done 2 weeks ago. Tried to tell you that. You won't listen. Please, listen. Jesus.
Thank you, Mr. Hoback. Now, Mr. McGuire.
Yeah, well, I was only going to, I think my colleague pretty well covered the ground that I was going to get into in regards to the present scandals that are going on. There's only one time for one question, and March 21st is too late to have had the emergency meeting anyway. We should have had an emergency meeting before that, before the international trade meeting that we already have had. We should have had this before that so that it could have been dealt with. Yesterday's Globe and Mail indicated that one farmer indicated that they're already in the fields in Alberta now. So it's in the Globe and Mail. So they can have a look at that for themselves. And so I guess it may be early, but they're in the fields. The canola is just one industry. But I agree, at present, it looks like it's the only formal one that's being dealt with here. But if you ask the trade, the industry, they're very skittish on being able to manage, how would you feel if you were shipping something to somebody and they decided that they said for what we think is a non-tariff barrier, basically, your product isn't fit anymore. Would you ship them another quality, another crop? That's why we're hearing rumors about some of the other crops that are out there as well. And I think that's unacceptable. All farmers want to know, and the industry wants to know, is what is the plan to get this solved. And that's why it's so important to have these people appear before the Agriculture Committee. I cannot believe that the Agriculture Minister, if they asked her herself, wouldn't want to appear before the Agriculture Committee. It just makes common sense that we would deal with this here. If this isn't an agricultural issue, as well as a trade issue, I don't know what is. And if it isn't affecting foreign affairs, then what would? So I think it's important to have those three ministers together. But we need more than an hour, as been pointed out when we were promised 2. I was at that international trade meeting when that came up, and we could have a separate meeting with the officials as well as with the ministers. And they both should have been held ages ago, and we still haven't had either one of them. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Mr. Dreeshen.
Well, thank you. I think what I'd like to do is a sub-amendment to the amendment that is there to change that date from April the 12th to April the 5th. And I would then like to reinsert the Minister of Agriculture, Agri-Foods, International Trade Diversification, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I've been on Ag Committee. I'll let you. Okay, I'll listen. Okay.
Previous motion, you can change the date.
Then I will change the date.
Point of order,
And
Mr.
then
Chair.
we'll talk later.
Point of order, Mr. Drouin.
just for clarification, we do not know if witnesses will be able to appear before April 5th. So we gave a timeline. Otherwise, we're going to have to come back and redo a motion to re-invite witnesses. So that was the point of April 12th. We certainly hope that witnesses will be able to appear in front of this committee as quickly as possible, but that was why the April 12th is there. Just point of clarification on that.
Thank you, Mr. Drouin.
I thank the member for that clarification. However, it seems as though there is a serious lack of trust. And that, I think, is the main reason why I am saying that we have to deal with. Basically, if the member recalls in the motions that I had presented, notices of motion, this would have been 3 weeks ago. From even the April 5th, and I think it is extremely critical that that this be done immediately. We put out there into the public that we don't care until April 12th. That isn't. Maybe we can talk about the nuances here about what that means, but that is not what our producers are looking at and the concerns. I would concur with the chair. And simply state the point of having that deadline being April the 5th, and then to speak to some of this. I've sat on Ag Committee when we were in government and now here in opposition for many years. It has always been focused on the producer, not focused on what CFIA might be able to do and that type of thing, but it always has been focused on the producer. And I'm starting to see that shift away. We've seen it with the Canada Food Guide. We've seen it with the transportation regulations changes for livestock. We have seen all of these types of things where the only focus is what the government departments are doing. And so you try to get in there and give the farmer's perspective of what is taking place, and then we get stonewalled. And I'm only speaking to the date right now because it's on the sub-amendment, but that's why I think it is so critical that we at least let farmers know and producers know and industry know that we are engaged with this and that it is uppermost in our minds. Having gone from the 21st through to the 5th is bad enough, but I believe that should be how we deal with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dreeshen. So the sub-amendment was to change the date to April 5th. So that is what we would have to vote at this time on the sub-amendment. So we're going to... Monsieur Drouin?
Mr. Chair, I would ask the clerk for advice just before we take a vote on this, and we're certainly supportive. What I don't want to do is come back here and have another meeting after, if April 5th, if none of the witnesses that we're inviting are available before April 5th, and will cause more delay for witnesses to come appear. So I would defer to the clerk. How can we make sure that if we want to be supportive, we'll support the sub-amendment for April 5th, but we don't want to have another meeting after, if the witnesses are not available after April 5th. We just don't want to have another meeting to discuss witnesses again coming back to committee. So how do we avert that to make it happen as quickly as possible?
So on Tuesday, the 2nd, we would know by then, and then we could modify the sub-amendment if needs be. That's how it could work. Mr. Hoback.
Again, I'm concerned you're saying Tuesday. No, you can start doing this today.
Yeah, she would in fact invite people starting now, but we would know Tuesday if they are available.
You could know today if some are available and have a meeting tomorrow.
Well, I don't know. That's
again, you're the chair. You can do what you want, but if you want to start this, I'm more than willing. My colleagues here are here. We're ready to go to work.
Yeah, so
CFIA could be here today, later this afternoon, even this evening if they want to.
Sub-amendment is for the 5th. It will give her, at the latest, it will give her a chance on Tuesday to know if these people are available, and that's what we would be voting on right now. Mr. Mr. Dreeshen.
Again, it's no later than Friday, April the 5th, you know, so it is not for the 5th. But my point was by stretching it out, and I understand what Mr. Drouin was saying, but we need to push, we need to let people know, and yeah, I can stick around this afternoon or tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday, in order to deal with this.
I'm here all weekend myself. So, Monsieur Drouin.
I don't think the issue is the members being here. I think the issue is whether or not witnesses can appear. So we all don't have a problem before that. It's just witnesses have to be able to appear. And I know some of them are in Saskatchewan right now, so I don't know what their weekend schedule is, and I'm not going to pretend that I know, I'm aware. But the earliest convenience, so if Tuesday you're saying is the earliest convenience that they could show up, then we're ready to have witnesses show up on Tuesday. But again, I'm ready to have them on Monday or whatever day you want to pick. I just don't know how soon witnesses will be able to appear in front of this committee. I know we're all here, but we have to think about, we need witnesses.
So on a plus personne. So we have a sub amendment on the table, and we can vote on that at this time if there's no other comments. Alors, est-ce que est-ce que tous les témoins comparaissent le plus tard vendredi?
That all witnesses appear no later than April 5th. That's the sub-amendment.
Of the motion? Point of order? Who's got a point of order? You do.
Right here.
Mr. McGuire, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So the sub-amendment is the only thing changed from our original amendment, or
The original.
the 5th, or is it the, could you read the whole amendment?
Okay.
No, we are voting only on the 5th.
Amendment, it was only the date, the 5th. That's all we're voting on right now. And then we'll move back
Okay.
to the sub.
Thank you.
Okay, the amendment itself. So can you go again? Who would be in favor of the sub amendment? Can I have a show of hands?
Could you read clearly the amendment and the sub-amendment, please?
Right now, we're just voting on the sub amendment, the date. That's all we need to vote on right now. On the date, on the
Just the
5th
date?
of it.
Okay.
That's it.
Then I'll speak to the sub-amendment after the date.
Okay. So who is in favor of que tous les témoins comparaissent au plus tard vendredi le 5,
That all witnesses appear no later than Friday, April 5th, 2019.
le 5 avril?
Excusez-moi, point d'ordre. Juste pour
Point d'ordre.
clarification.
Point of order, just a clarification. So which sub-amendment are we voting on? Mr. Hoback's or Mr. Dreeshen's? Okay, Mr. Dreeshen's. Just the date. Okay, just a sec. So on the date, but with which witnesses? We're just voting on the date. This doesn't affect the witnesses now. We're just saying no later than April 5th. Okay, but then there is a motion. Yes, we'll be voting on the amendment after, and then the motion. But now we're just voting on the sub-amendment. The sub-amendment from Mr. Drouin. No, rather from Mr. Dreeshen, to change the date to April 5th. With which witnesses?
Ensuite, c'est juste la date. Après ça, on va revenir à l'amendement. Puis on va voter sur le témoin.
We're just voting on the date now. Okay, so once again, can I get a show of hands?
Okay. We have, okay. And 4. Okay. We have a count. Okay, 9. Okay, now. Oh, Mr. Hoback, you want to talk about the amendment?
Yeah, again, I'm glad we're making some movement on the dates. That's good to see, positive motion. I want to build on that too. Mr. Duran, I think you should withdraw this amendment and go back to the original motion, because without having the appropriate witnesses here, what good are having the meetings? So if you have anything, just amend it to include producers. But you need the 3 ministers. You need them. You know that. Everybody over there knows that. Everybody over here knows that. So leave them there. So I'd ask you to withdraw it or change it to just include producers. Otherwise, I'd identify producers as industry representatives anyway, so I guess they're already included. Yeah. So that's fine. But just withdraw it and let's vote on the main motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hoback. Monsieur Berthold?
Monsieur le Président, encore une fois,
Mr. Chair, I'm going to make the same appeal that my colleague just did. I'm going to ask my colleague to withdraw the amendment for a very simple reason. It's the committee's role to ask ministers to appear. It's the committee's role to ask ministers why. And so why don't we just ask the ministers to appear? It's simple and easy. Once again, I think the Minister of Agriculture herself will be surprised to see that we're not allowing her to appear before the Agriculture Committee for this first and very important time during this important crisis. So why not give the minister the opportunity to speak before the Agriculture Committee on this file which directly affects agriculture? Once again, with the amendment, they don't mention the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So I don't know how to say this, but I mean, I would ask my colleague to withdraw the amendment and to come back to the original motion so that we can ask the ministers to appear. If the ministers themselves don't want to come, well, then they can deal with the consequences of deciding not to appear before the Agriculture Committee. But this way we'd be sending a clear message on behalf of farmers that we want to hear their version of the story. We want to know what's happening, and we want them to reassure farmers. We want to have them speak to farmers about this important matter. How can it be a problem to have the Agriculture Minister appear before the Agriculture Committee? So once again, Mr. Chair, I would just really ask my colleague to withdraw the amendment, to come back to the original motion, and to allow the three ministers to decide themselves if they want to appear, and then to live with the political consequences of their decision. But, why is the committee still acting as an extension of the government by not asking ministers to appear here? That's our role. We're supposed to be independent and to hear from ministers. I'm sure that all of my colleagues want to know what the ministers have to say on these files. So let's let things play out, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McGregor.
Yes, I'd like to join with the Conservative members in asking Mr. Drouin to withdraw the amendment. We're here in public. We're televised. The media is doing a live stream tweet marathon on this committee meeting. So Canadian public, Canadian producers are fully aware of what's going on at this committee right now. And I think we made a very clear case about why the minister needs to appear. I cannot support this amendment. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't welcome the chance to hear from CFIA and industry representatives, but we need to have the minister. That's where the buck stops. I think it's incumbent upon this committee to at least make the invitation. I know ministers' schedules are very busy, but I think we've just heard today a willingness to modify our schedules to help them out. I'm going to be here in Ottawa this weekend. I'm sure all of us can find some time next week for a special committee meeting to accommodate the minister's schedule. But I'd ask Mr. Drouin here in this public setting in front of a wider Canadian audience to please withdraw this amendment so that we can have the ministers here before this committee. As I mentioned before, it's been since November 29th. We're almost in April. We need to have this legislative oversight of a very important department over a very important issue.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Monsieur Berthold.
Pour terminer, Monsieur le Président,
Just to conclude, Mr. Chair, since March 8th, when we sent a letter calling for the ministers to appear, this has been ongoing. We're almost at the end of March now. We still haven't heard from the three ministers, and it still seems that the Liberals don't have any intention to hear from them. So I want to appeal to my colleague one last time to withdraw the amendment and to allow us to invite the three ministers so that we can truly study this issue, which is an agricultural issue in this committee. Thank you, Mr. Berthold. So the sub-amendment is that the committee invite the following witnesses to appear concerning a point of order. Mr. Berthold, yep. I just want to make sure that Mr. Drouin had correctly understood, and I wanted to make sure that he was not going to withdraw the amendment before we vote. Well, Mr. Chair, I'm not here to play politics. The Minister of International Trade and the Minister of Agriculture will be appearing before a committee on Tuesday. So whether they're before this committee or the International Trade Committee, the important thing is that farmers will be able to hear from the ministers. So what we don't want to do here at this committee is redo the same thing that the International Trade Committee is already doing. So if we want to add value to this study, then we should hear from departmental officials and industry representatives, including farmers. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Drouin.
L'amendement,
So the amendment concerning official notices of non-compliance, that's the one that we're voting on. Mr. McGregor?
vote, okay. So all,
Donc, sur l'amendement,
So on Mr. Drouin's amendment
En faveur.
for,
Madame Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Madame Nassif. Monsieur Drouin.
Oui.
Monsieur Berthold.
Non.
Mr. Dreeshen.
No.
Mr. Obak.
Let me get this clear. CFIA can appear at both committees, but the ministers can't. So no.
Mr. McGregor.
No.
OK, ça fait le sous-amendement a été
L'amendement.
rejeté. Maintenant, on vote pour...
L'amendement a été.
L'amendement a été rejeté.
the amendment was defeated? Nope, sorry, it was carried. Okay, and now we'll be voting on the motion as amended. So,
J'aimerais que
Mr. Chair, I'm hoping you could read the amended motion, please. So, the amended motion is that the committee invite the following witnesses to appear concerning official notices of non-compliance from China for Canadian exports of canola seeds. And the witnesses would be CFIA officials and industry representatives. And that all witnesses appear no later than Friday, April 5th.
Alors, on va voter pour...
So we will be voting on the motion as amended. All in favor?
va indiquer s'ils sont
Please indicate if you're in favor.
pour le vote. OK. On va faire un vote enregistré.
Donc, nous allons voter sur la motion de Luc.
Okay, so we will be voting on Luc Berthold's motion as amended. Mr. Breton.
J'ai toujours un petit peu de difficulté.
Okay, I'm just still having a little issue with the procedure here. So it's what you just read, Mr. Speaker. Okay, in that case, I'm in favor of it.
Area.
Yep.
Yep.
Miss Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Madame Nassif. Monsieur Drouin.
Oui.
Monsieur Berthold.
Non.
Mr. Dreeshen.
Already talking to industry representatives, so I'll say no to this.
Mr. Obak.
Again, I've got CFIA and Trade Committee, so no.
Mr. McGregor.
In protest, no.
Donc, la motion amendée est approuvée.
Alors, la motion amendée est approuvée. Et
The motion as amended is carried. Mr. Berthold. Mr. Chair, I want to table the following motion, that the committee invite the Minister of Foreign Affairs to appear concerning the recent stop of Canadian canola soils to China, and that they invite farmers and industry representatives, and that they appear no later than April 5th.
d'après mon interprétation de la...
So based on my interpretation of the motion that was just tabled, it's almost identical to the one that was previously tabled. So, sorry, just before you make a decision, Mr. Chair, because I don't want to question your decision. That's not my intention, but I just want to remind everyone that the motion that was amended, I mean, the justification for that was that the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of International Trade were already scheduled to appear before a different committee. So what I am asking is that the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who will not be at the other committee, would come and testify here on this issue.
Donc, Monsieur le Président,
So, Mr. Chair, if I've understood correctly, it would make sense for the committee to want to hear from the Minister of Foreign Affairs here or before the International Trade Committee. But this motion really is completely different because previously we were asking for the three ministers to come, and now we're only asking this minister to come along with farmers. And so that was not in the first motion where we talked about industry representatives only.
Non, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order. The original motion does not say that the ministers and officials and industry representatives should come here before the committee together. As my colleague said, that's not true.
Oui. Et alors, dans la motion originale,
So the original motion did call on the Minister of Foreign Affairs to appear as well.
sorry.
Can he clarify what the motion does say then? He's saying it doesn't include officials. Just you're basically saying that you will not call any official or any ministers in front of the committee then.
No.
What are you saying then?
It didn't
You want to go ahead, Monsieur Drouin.
Mr. Bertol said that the motion called for all witnesses to appear together, which it didn't.
Monsieur le Président.
So, note.
Il y a un petit point, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair. I tabled that motion once again to allow Canadian farmers to hear the full story of what's happening here. And this decision to reject the motion, it brings me to another point, and I'm going to ask for a clarification from the clerk here. How could the committee ask the Minister of Foreign Affairs to appear now that this motion was defeated? Is there any other way of doing that, Madam Clerk? Because honestly, this is totally different. This is a minister calling on the Minister of Foreign Affairs to explain the relationship with China. It's one minister rather than all three. We're talking about farmers rather than industry representatives. So, Mr. Chair, I don't understand the interpretation according to which this is the same motion. If I was asking all three ministers to appear, I would understand. But here we're only talking about one minister. The only minister, in fact, who was not already invited by the Liberals to appear before the other committee. So I think it's entirely legitimate to ask her to appear. And as I said, the Minister of Agriculture herself has publicly said to the media that it is the Minister of Foreign Affairs who is responsible for the relationship with China, who is responsible for this file. So I don't understand why they wouldn't want to agree to this motion. Thank you, Mr. Berthold. Yeah, we already talked about the three people who were invited, and we already voted on that before. So this is really just a repeat of the previous motion. That's my interpretation. So unfortunately, I'm not going to allow the motion because it's too similar. Thank you, Mr. Dreeshen.
So from that reading, does it matter whether it's today that we ask because we happen to be discussing, or does this simply mean that we will not have the opportunity in the Ag Committee to bring the Trade Minister in, to bring in the Ag Minister, or to bring in the Foreign Affairs Minister? Is what we
Mr.
are saying?
Dreeshen, this is not debatable. You can challenge my decision, but this is not debatable. So If there is no other matters to be discussed, that is all that I have for today. Mr. Holbach?
So can you shed some light? Are we going to have a meeting later today or tomorrow morning, or how are you going to inform us on
I
that?
don't have any motion of a meeting for today or tomorrow.
You said that you would start immediately, so I assume you're going to start either today or tomorrow.
So we're going to leave the clerk the chance to call a witness and see. We'll decide on. We have a date decided. It's no later than the 5th, and we'll see when the witness.
So are you going to waive the 24-hour notice then on this scenario, or how's that going to work?
So we have.
Going to have to waive it.
I will wait till I have information from the clerk how soon they could be available, and then we can decide on the date. And it will be probably at this stage, unless there's we can get all the witnesses that are required to come in earlier. Monsieur Berthold.
Monsieur le Président, est-ce que si on adopte
Mr. Chair, if we adopt a motion here that would allow the clerk to waive the 48-hour notice, then would the clerk be able to call a committee meeting on Sunday, for example, if needed?
OK, c'est
Mr. Chair, can we let the
Monsieur
clerk
Drouin?
do her job and just not try and change all the rules? I mean, let's have full confidence in the clerk. I do have full confidence in the clerk. If the members express no confidence in the clerk, that's their issue. But can we just have a reasonable time let's let the clerk call witnesses, and then I trust you and I trust the clerk. Thank you.
point of order.
Point of order, Mr.
I never said I have no confidence in the clerk. I asked the clerk a question that you didn't answer yet, Mr. President. So it's fine trying to playing politics, but this is not an issue for playing politics right now. We want to help this committee to have this meeting as soon as possible. I asked the clerk, how can we do it? So I want Mr. Drouin to be prudent, because I didn't put any doubt in my confidence in the clerk.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. We just want to empower the clerk to be able to call a meeting in the next 2 hours if she can find the witnesses. So waiving the 48-hour privilege is actually, in most cases, detrimental to the opposition. But we're saying we're willing to waive that if she can get
Point
witnesses
of order,
together.
Mr. Holbach. That is not a point of order. Yeah. So
Clarifying for
So right now, we have a meeting scheduled for the 2nd, and that is where the date I'm going to set right now, that the first meeting. It'll give us enough time to make sure that we have the witnesses in, we have the officials. So the 2nd is what I will decide that will be the next meeting, which will be next Tuesday. Mr. McGregor?
Point of clarification, Chair. So I just want to understand that maybe if the clerk can inform, like through you, what our abilities as a committee are. If as has been indicated, that a number of us are here on the weekend and on standby, is it possible for this committee to waive the normal notice period? That's what we're trying to get information on, Chair. That's all.
Need a notice right now. It's not about 24 hours or 48 hours. My judgment is that we need to have the proper time to get the people in here, and I think that 2nd is is next Tuesday, which is 3-4 days from now, and I think that it'll give us the proper time to have the right people here and make sure that that we can have a proper meeting. Get prepared. We need to get the background. We need to get all that information prepared with the clerks. We need to get all the the question and everything. So my decision at this time is to have that meeting on the 2nd. Next Tuesday. Point of order, Mr. Dreeshen.
I think the question that, to expand upon where we're trying to go with getting information from the clerk, was if we could have unanimous consent to be able to move away from some of the standing committee rules, and I think that's what we're asking for.
There's no time. That can be done. The reasoning that I'm giving is that we need proper time to get the information, to get the analysts to give us the proper background on all of this, everybody be up to speed, and then we'll have a quality meeting that we can, ask the right questions and have good answers for the producers. Monsieur Berthold.
Donc, si je comprends bien, là,
So, just to summarize, if I've understood this correctly, we don't need any motion or unanimous consent to allow you to have the meeting when you want, but you have decided that the meeting will be on April 2nd. Yes. Okay.
There's no other matter of discussion. We shall adjourn the meeting.